My name is Maristela Fernandez. I am currently 72 years old, and if you ask about Bonfim do Sul, the town where I live, you would probably have to search for it on a map, as it's so small that only locals know about it. However, no one could imagine that I, an elderly woman with gray hair and hands weathered by a lifetime of hard work in the fields, would become the center of attention in this place. My life had always been peaceful and discreet. I am not someone who likes to show off. Everything changed on an October afternoon, when the sun shone through white clouds, a sky as clear as a clean cloth. And then, I received news that to this day, I still cannot believe is true. When I was 61 years old, Dr. Adamar looked at me through his thick glasses, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Fernandez, you are pregnant." My heart seemed to stop beating, my whole body went weak. I thought I had misheard. I kept thinking this doctor was confused or joking, but in reality, I, a woman who had long thought I was no longer capable of bearing children, was pregnant at 61. And not only that, the father of the child was a man 30 years younger than me. This town, where I live, could not believe its ears, and whispers kept rising. It's divine punishment. Punishment for what? Because I dared to love again? Sandro, the father of the child, is a young man who came from elsewhere. He made a living doing small odd jobs, repairing houses. And then, he came knocking on my door, carrying a backpack, a radiant smile, and an offer to fix the roof. And that's when everything began to change. This story, mine, Sandro's and the child's, will make you unable to stop thinking. Listen, let me tell you, I never imagined that he would actually be the one to mend my heart, which had remained broken for so long in solitude. My daughters, who lived far away and rarely visited me, suddenly appeared to give me moral lessons. Solange, the older one, cried copiously to the point of almost flooding the living room. Patricia, the younger one, accused me of irresponsibility. She claimed I was embarrassing the family, as if love and new life were cause for mockery. However, the worst was the look from people on the street. The women who used to come to my house for coffee stopped appearing. It was as if I had contracted a contagious disease. But it wasn't a disease. It was new life flowering in my womb. In those first days, I would hide in the bathroom to cry in secret, so no one would notice my fragility. I begged God to give me strength and discernment, because amidst all that confusion, one certainty invaded me with clarity. That child was a gift, not a punishment. And I would love and protect him with all my strength, regardless of what people might say. Bonfim do Sul is so small that if someone sneezes at the entrance, you immediately hear "bless you" at the exit, a place where everyone knows everyone's life. I know the name of my neighbor's dog and even the brand of medicine that Mr. Joaquim takes to control his blood pressure. It's a cozy place with a central square where elderly ladies gather to share stories and elderly men dedicate themselves to playing dominoes in the shade of an old mango tree, whose history says it was planted by the first inhabitant of the region. On this land I was born and raised. Here I married Tonino, who has already passed away, and I became a widow 11 years ago. He was a good man, hard-working, but too reserved. He died unexpectedly, victim of a heart attack while fixing the back fence. Since then, I lived alone in that spacious house with blue windows and a wooden door, in the company of my chickens, my plants, and my memories. My daughters, Solange and Patricia, moved to Sao Paulo long ago. They called from time to time and sent gifts at Christmas and sometimes at Easter. Solange is a dentist, married to an engineer, and has 2 children who practically don't know me. Patricia works in computer science in an area I can't explain precisely. She claims she has decided not to have children because the world is too complicated. Both live in a hurry, always too busy to visit me. I had grown accustomed to solitude. I had my church friends, the sewing club that met on Wednesdays at Dona Lourdes' house, and the garden I tended with great dedication. From time to time I would visit my comadre Cefa to have coffee and find out the town's news, which was almost always the same. Who had gotten married? Who had separated? Who owed money at Don Gerald's store? It was a cloudy Monday in September when my life took a new direction. The night before it had rained torrentially, and my already worn roof began to leak in 3 different points of the house. Water fell into the pots I had scattered on the floor, producing that dripping sound that disturbs anyone's sleep. I decided to go to the weekly market looking for someone who could solve my roof problem. That's where I saw him for the first time. Sandro was a tall man with skin bronzed by the sun and strong arms that spoke of heavy labor. At 34 years old, he carried a ladder tied to his back and a toolbox in his hand. He had come from Labras, a city about 200 kilometers away, after losing his construction job, and now traveled from town to town, doing temporary work to sustain himself. What struck me most was his shy smile that slowly formed on his face when he spoke. A simple sign announced, "I do all kinds of work. Mason, plumber, electrician." He wasn't from here. You could tell by his different accent when he addressed me. "Good morning, Mrs. Fernandez. Do you need any service?" And I, who was never very talkative with strangers, found myself telling him about my roof, the leaks, and how difficult it was to find someone who would do a job well done for a fair price. Sandro listened to me attentively with his brown eyes fixed on me, as if each of my words was important. It wasn't a look of pity like many direct at elderly widows. It was a look of respect. "You can rest assured, Mrs. Fernandez, I'll fix your roof properly. I work well and with guarantee," he told me, and I don't know why I believed him at that moment. We agreed on the next day, very early. I offered to pay him half in advance, but he refused. "Only after you approve the work." That night I could barely sleep. The house seemed less empty, just knowing someone would come the next day. I prepared the back room in case he needed to stay a few days to finish the work. I made a creamy cornflour cake, the kind that melts in your mouth, and selected the most aromatic coffee I could find. Sandro arrived exactly at 7 in the morning. The aroma of freshly made coffee floated in the kitchen when he rang the doorbell. I watched him through the window as he adjusted the ladder and organized the tools with attention. He had large, calloused hands, but he handled the tools as if they were delicate instruments, showing respect for his craft. I prepared a simple but careful breakfast. Homemade bread, cornflour cake, cheese that my comadre Seifa had given me, and guava jam made by me. I invited him to eat before starting work. He hesitated, saying it wasn't necessary, but finally accepted. He savored everything with pleasure, praising every detail. "Mrs. Fernandez, this is the best coffee I've had in months," he said. While he worked on the roof, I took care of my tasks inside the house, always looking for an excuse to pass through the patio and observe the work's progress. And every time I appeared, there he was, concentrated, sweating, but always with a smile when he saw me. At the end of the day, when he came down from the ladder, with his face dirty with cement and his hair disheveled, I already felt that something had changed in me. I'm going to need a couple more days to finish, Mrs. Fernandez. There's more damage than we thought," he informed me. I offered him the back room to avoid him looking for another place to stay. He accepted with gratitude. And that's how it all began. Little did I know that this simple act of kindness, offering him a place to stay, would change both our lives forever. Sometimes the most significant moments in our lives disguise themselves as ordinary encounters. A man fixing my roof, not realizing he was also repairing a heart that I believed had stopped beating long ago. Sandro finished fixing the roof on the 3rd day, but claimed it was necessary to check some beams in the back. Later, he suggested it would be prudent to also check the gutters. I knew he was making up excuses to stay longer, and deep in my heart I wanted the same. The house became more cheerful with his presence. It was good to hear other footsteps besides mine, to have someone to talk with during meals. We started with trivial conversations, you know. I would praise the strong coffee he prepared early in the morning. He said that men who work with cement have skillful hands, capable of feeling things. We shared stories as if we had known each other for years. He told me about his difficult childhood, his father's early departure, how he learned to work in construction as a young man. He spoke of his dreams of someday having his own house, of how he wanted to have a family, something he had never achieved from living on the road. I told him about Tonino, about my widowhood, about my daughter's departure. I showed him the old photos in the leather-covered album, the embroidery I created on sleepless nights, the garden that was my pride. And while I talked, Sandro looked into my eyes, paying true attention. It wasn't the look of someone waiting for you to finish so they can talk about their own life. It was the look of someone who is there, present, absorbing every word. A week after his arrival, we were sitting on the porch savoring chamomile tea when he took my hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it made my heart race as if I were a teenager again. His hand was warm, rough, and held mine with a delicacy that made me cry without wanting to. "Mrs. Fernandez," he said quietly, "you are the most special woman I have ever met." That was the beginning, a start that wasn't in my plans. It wasn't intentional, but it seemed as inevitable as the sunrise each day. In a short time, he moved permanently to the small back room, although he spent most of his time in the main house with me. We shared moments watching television, tending the garden, and going to the market. He taught me to prepare Maneira-style rice with golden garlic. I taught him how to make pumpkins sweet with coconut. However, what we didn't realize is that we were under the watchful eye of the city. It was enough for neighbors to see Sandro leave my house twice a week for rumors in Bonfim du Sul to spread like a snake ready to attack. At first, they were just whispers when we passed by. Then it became open gossip. Maristella wants to have a grandson by force, I heard Signora Odette say at Juvenal's butcher shop, laughing loudly so everyone could hear her. It's a shame for a woman her age to be with such a young boy. And when I entered, everyone suddenly fell silent, as if I hadn't heard anything. At the small corner store, Teresa, who was my school companion, pulled my arm and expressed her concern. "Maristella, that boy is only interested in your money." "Be careful, woman." I replied that I had no money, only my modest pension and the house Tonino had left me. She shook her head as if I were a stubborn child. In the church I had attended every Sunday for more than 40 years, the bench where I sat began to empty on both sides. The ladies from the prayer group stopped inviting me to meetings, and the worst was when Father Anselmo, during Sunday's sermon, mentioned inappropriate behaviors for one's age and looked directly at me. It didn't take long for the news to reach Sao Paulo. My 2 daughters, who rarely remembered my birthday, appeared unexpectedly on a Friday afternoon with the faces of those who come to solve a serious problem. Solange entered speaking loudly, wanting to know where the opportunist was. Patricia, calmer but with eyes full of reproach, sat with me in the kitchen. "Mom, what are you doing? The whole town is talking." "It's a shame for the whole family." Solange went from one side to another, rummaging through my things as if looking for evidence of some crime. "That man is going to take everything you have, don't you realize?" Patricia cried as if I were about to die. "Mom, we're worried. You're already of a certain age and that boy is very young. What does he want from a 61-year-old woman? Think about it. It doesn't make sense." I just listened to them. I let them express everything they wanted. When they finished, I looked at both of them and told them calmly, "You left and abandoned me here alone for years. Now you want to decide how I should live my life. You worry so much that you don't even call to know if I'm alive or dead. But when I find someone who makes me happy, then you appear to give me moral lessons." They were left speechless. Solange still tried to insist, claiming she was going to talk to a lawyer, alleging that I wasn't in condition to make decisions. Patricia just cried more. When Sandro arrived from work and found that scene, he almost left, but I asked him to come in. "This is Sandro." I introduced him, and he stays in my house because I want him to, because he respects me and treats me well. Something many don't do. My daughters spent the weekend trying to convince me to throw out Sandro. However, they didn't realize what I saw. They didn't see how he got up early and prepared breakfast for me, how he sat beside me on the balcony and took my hand with affection. The way he enjoyed my old stories, as if they were the most fascinating on the planet. The way he looked at me with admiration and not with pity. How he washed dishes without me asking. The way he listened to me, really listened when I expressed my fears, my joys, my memories. On Monday, after they left, promising to return with a lawyer, I invited Sandro to sit on the balcony and asked him if he wanted to leave to avoid more complications. He looked at me and responded, "Mrs. Fernandez, I'll only leave if you ask me to, because what we have together is worth more than any rumor." And there, in that space, under the curious gaze of neighbor Neusa, who pretended to hang clothes just to gossip, Sandro kissed me for the first time. A tender, affectionate kiss that made me feel like the rest of the world had disappeared. A kiss that made me realize I was still alive, intensely alive, and that I still had the right to feel, to love, and to be loved. What no one in that city understood was that in the intimacy of our home, Sandro and I were simply two human beings who had found companionship in each other when they no longer had hope. Two souls who recognized each other despite the age difference, despite the disapproving looks, despite the moralistic advice. And that, my dear, no one had the right to criticize. Despite the challenges we faced, our love continued to grow stronger each day. What started as a simple act of kindness, offering shelter to a traveling handyman, had blossomed into something neither of us had expected to find at this stage of our lives. About 2 months after Sandro moved into my house, I began to experience unusual sensations. At first, I thought it was just fatigue. I was dedicating more time to caring for the house, preparing elaborate meals daily, and even returning with greater dedication to the garden. It was natural to feel exhausted, wasn't it? After all, I'm no longer young. However, shortly after, persistent dizziness appeared. In the morning, as soon as I put my feet on the ground, I felt the urgent need to run to the bathroom. The aroma of coffee, which had always been so pleasant to me, began to cause me nausea. Even the perfume of the roses that Sandro had planted in the garden, which I used to love, began to repulse me. It must be some virus. I would comment to Sandro, who watched me with concern as I turned pale every time I tried to eat. He prepared chamomile tea for me, bought ginger for me to chew, but nothing relieved me significantly. It was Sifa, my lifelong comadre, who raised the hypothesis that I didn't even dare to consider. "Maristella, have you thought about the possibility of being pregnant?" she whispered to me while we peeled potatoes in my kitchen. I laughed so hard I almost fell off the chair. "Sefa, please. I'm 61 years old. It's been more than 10 years since I've had my period regularly." "So what?" "My cousin Jurima had a baby at 54, and the doctor explained it was because she thought she could no longer get pregnant and stopped taking precautions." Sefa continued peeling potatoes as if she were talking about the most trivial subject in the world. That suggestion persisted in my mind. Sandro and I didn't take precautions. It was true. Why would we? At my age, I assumed that was no longer a cause for concern. Not even Tonino, may he rest in peace, had gotten me pregnant in the last years of marriage. However, the symptoms intensified. One hot afternoon at home, Sandro was waiting for me with a smile and a plate of steaming corn cake. I sat at the table, took a deep breath, and told him everything. He opened his eyes wide, turned white as wax, and dropped his coffee cup on the floor. Then he got up, hugged me tightly, and began to cry between sobs. I don't know who was more in shock, him or me. The news spread like gunpowder through Bonfim du Sul. Sefa almost fainted when she found out. Her daughters were silent for a while, assimilating the information, and then began to ask 1,000 questions. The neighbors whispered in the street, some congratulating, others criticizing, but I didn't care. Inside me, a strange force grew each day, a mixture of fear and joy, of insecurity and hope. I began to feel the baby's first movements in my womb. Small kicks, light tickles, a sign that life was beating there. We chose the name Samuel, a strong biblical name that meant heard by God. I began to prepare the room with clothes that Sifa had saved from her youngest grandson. It was blue, but I didn't mind. Samuel would be loved, cared for, and protected, regardless of the color of the clothes. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Age weighed on me, my body hurt, fatigue was constant, but I had an unbreakable determination. I wanted to give Samuel the best of me. I had all the tests done, followed medical indications, ate healthily, and walked every day. Sandro accompanied me in everything, caring for me with redoubled affection. He read books about pregnancy in the third age. He gave me massages on my swollen feet and prepared teas to relieve nausea. The daughters took turns taking me to appointments and doing the shopping. Sepha knitted little jackets and wool booties with such care that it seemed like she was making them for her own child. And so, between scares, joys, and much love, the months passed. Samuel was born on a cold winter night, normal delivery, with 2.8 kilograms and 47 centimeters. A perfect, healthy baby, full of life. When I held him in my arms for the first time, I felt such strong emotion that I couldn't breathe. It was as if my life had begun again there. In that instant, Samuel brought new light to our family, new hope to our hearts. He was proof that love has no age, that life always finds a way to flourish, even when everything seems impossible. Those sensations awakened memories of my previous pregnancies, Solanga's and Patricia's, which occurred more than 3 decades ago. A week passed, and the uncertainty became unbearable. It was imperative to get an answer. So I decided to take a bus to the San Francisco Health Center, located at the entrance of the city. I opted for this center instead of the neighborhood health center to avoid unnecessary speculation, since I was known by everyone in the region. Donna Rita, the head nurse, had been practicing her profession for about 20 years. Although I knew her from Sunday masses, we didn't have a close relationship. Upon entering her office, she adjusted her glasses and sketched a welcoming smile. "Mrs. Fernandez, what brings you here today?" she asked. I hesitated a moment before asking her for a pregnancy test. Donna Rita, with an inquisitive look over her glasses, let out a slight laugh. "A beta-HCG? What for, Maristella?" "It's just that I've had some strange symptoms. Dizziness, nausea." I tried to explain, feeling my face blush with embarrassment. "At your age, it must be labyrinthitis or hypertension." "Let's take your blood pressure first," she responded as if instructing a stubborn child. "Rita, please," I insisted. "I just want to take the test. It's my right," I declared firmly, looking her in the eyes. She sighed with the expression of someone preparing to deal with an eccentric person and filled out the form. "You'll have to go to the laboratory downtown. The result will be available in 3 days." Those 3 days stretched like 3 years. I kept silent with Sandro and Sifa, avoiding creating premature expectations or apprehensions. On the designated day, I returned to the center with legs trembling from anxiety. Donna Rita, seeing me in the waiting room, called me directly to a corner of her office. I noticed a change in her posture. The mocking smile had disappeared. She looked at me with wide eyes, as if she had seen a ghost, and whispered, "Maristella, you're pregnant." My heart beat so hard I feared it would jump out of my mouth. "Are you sure, Rita? Can't it be a laboratory error?" I asked her. "The result is very clear," she responded, showing me a paper full of incomprehensible numbers and letters, but with the word positive written in large letters. I left the health center in a state of shock. The sun of Bonfim do Sul seemed more intense that day, almost blinding me. I sat on a bench in the square and burst into tears, not knowing if they were tears of joy, fear, or pure amazement. I, Maristella Fernandez, was about to be a mother again at 61 years old. The following week, Rita referred me for an ultrasound at Dr. Adamar's private clinic. I used the savings I kept under the mattress to avoid the long wait of the public health system. I needed a definitive confirmation. Dr. Adamar, a gentleman with white hair and paternal countenance, applied cold gel to my belly and began the examination. I trembled so much he had to ask me several times to breathe deeply. "Mrs. Fernandez," he told me, turning the screen toward me, "here is your baby. By the size, you must be about 12 weeks along." On the screen, a small pulsating dot, a beating heart, a life developing inside me. I had 2 more blood tests done in different laboratories. All confirmed the pregnancy. I could no longer deny reality. When I got home, Sandro was waiting for me with a smile and a corn cake fresh from the oven. I sat at the table, took a deep breath, and revealed the truth to him. That day, upon returning home, Sandro was in the back garden fixing the fence. A smile formed on his face when he saw me, but he soon noticed there was something different about me. "Something has happened, Maristella. You're very pale," he asked me. I sat on the small garden bench. I invited him to sit beside me. I opened my purse and took out the envelope with the test results. "Sandro, "I finally discovered what I have, the reason why I wasn't feeling well," I told him. He took my hand, showing concern. "Is it something serious?" he asked. "It depends on the point of view," I responded, handing him the document. Sandro stared at the paper for what seemed like an eternity. He remained silent with his gaze fixed on the result. Suddenly, a tear slid down his cheek, followed by another. He knelt before me right there in the packed earth of the patio and hugged me around the waist, resting his face on my belly. "My child," he murmured softly with his voice broken by emotion. "My child." I had never seen a man cry like that, without shame or attempt to hide his emotions. He cried, embraced to my belly, still flat, as if he could already feel the baby's presence inside. After a moment, he raised his wet face and looked at me with such intense joy that he seemed about to burst. "Aren't you angry or scared?" I asked him, feeling my own tears escape. "Scared, Maristella? This is the greatest gift God could grant me. A child of yours, ours," he responded. I also cried, but not only from joy, but also from fear. Fear of people, of malicious comments, of gossip that already circulated freely and would now become a storm. Fear of my age, of my already mature body that would shelter new life. Fear of the future, of what it would be like to raise a child at this stage of life. However, observing Sandro kneeling, kissing my belly, and promising to be the best father in the world, something inside me ignited. Life, which I believed had already given me everything it could give, was taking me again down that path, a path I never imagined traveling again. The path of motherhood at 61 years old, in a small town where everyone knows and judges each other. That night, as we lay together in the bed that was once exclusively mine, Sandro caressed my face and told me, "Maristella, let the whole town say what they want, but this child will be born full of love, and that's what really matters." I tried to believe in those words as I listened to the crickets singing outside and felt the warmth of his body next to mine. I struggled to believe that love would be enough to face the challenges that lay ahead. The news of my pregnancy spread through Bonfim du Sol faster than a fire in dry straw. I don't know how they found out. Maybe Rita from the gas station shared the information with someone, or maybe some neighbor saw the test result when Sandro hugged me in the patio. The reason doesn't matter. The fact is that in one day I was trying to adapt to the idea, and the next day the whole town already knew. What were once rumors became direct insults. Before they at least pretended not to be talking about me. Now not even that. They would cross paths with me on the street and turn their backs. Some people crossed to the other sidewalk as if I were carrying some contagious disease. On one occasion, I was in the supermarket line when Senora Marlene, who attended the same church as me for more than 30 years, examined me from head to toe and said loudly so everyone could hear, "There are people who show no shame at a stage of life when they should be grandmothers, wanting to behave like children." I stood paralyzed, not knowing how to react, holding the shopping bags and with a lump in my throat. There was a day when Nusa, my neighbor, simply spat on the ground when I passed by. She spat as if I represented something repugnant. That same Neusa, who used to share coffee at my table, who sought comfort on my shoulder when her husband had health problems. The most difficult moment was in church. I had always been a faithful devotee. I never missed Mass. I helped with festivities. I knew everyone by name. Upon entering the church, with 4 months of pregnancy and a belly that was already beginning to show, I perceived the murmurs, people turning to look, disapproving glances, contained laughter. Father Anselmo, newly arrived at the parish, barely greeted me. During that Sunday's homily, he addressed modern times and the aberrations that society was tolerating. He mentioned that some people don't even respect nature created by God, and that there's an appropriate age to be a mother. He didn't mention my name directly, of course, but everyone knew his words were directed at me. I left the church early, even before communion, with trembling legs and a broken heart. My friends, those I considered true friends, disappeared. The phone stopped ringing. Visits ceased. Cefa, my comadre, was the only one who maintained contact. Even she initially showed hesitation. "Maristella, are you sure you want to go through all this at our age?" At least she asked me the question without judging me. The situation progressively worsened. A mother from the municipal school, where I taught math tutoring to children twice a week, filed a complaint with the principal. She expressed her fear that her child would be in the same class as Maristella's child, as if my baby, who hadn't even been born, could infect other children with something. Principal Margarita, who had always treated me kindly, called me to her office with an embarrassed air. "Signora Maristella, perhaps it would be better if you took a leave until the situation normalizes." And so I lost even that small job that brought me so much joy helping children with numbers. My belly grew at the same rate as the city's rejection. The more evident the pregnancy became, the more people distanced themselves. It was as if I, who had always been part of this community, had become a stranger overnight. I remember an afternoon when I went to the pharmacy to buy some vitamins the doctor had prescribed, and pharmacist Tiburcio attended to me with an expression as severe as if I represented disgust. "You should be ashamed," he murmured while handing me the medications. "A lady your age." I returned home crying copiously, unable to see the path. I arrived home and collapsed in the kitchen chair, sobbing like a child. It was crying that sprang from the depths of my soul, the crying of someone who had lost a place that had always been theirs. At that moment I felt a hand on my back. Sandro had arrived early from work and had heard my crying. He knelt in front of me, took my hands, and stayed there in silence, waiting for me to calm down. When I could finally speak, I told him everything. The pharmacy, the school, the church, the insults, the turned backs. "Do you want to leave here?" he asked me, with eyes full of concern. "We can move. Start over somewhere else where no one knows us." I reflected on my house, on the house that Tonino and I built, on the patio where my daughters played, on the trees I planted, on all the life I built in this city. "No," I declared, "this is my house. This is my land. I won't flee because of malicious gossip." It was at that moment when I observed Sandro sketch a smile full of pride. "Then we'll stay and show this city that this baby is the greatest gift God could have given us." From that day on, Sandro intensified his work. He accepted jobs in 3 different houses the same day, leaving before dawn and returning when it was already night. His hands became even rougher, his face more burned by the sun. However, he never complained, saving every cent. One day, he came home carrying wooden boards and tools. "What's that?" I asked him. "I'm going to build our son's room," he responded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. On weekends, when he didn't work outside, he spent the whole day sawing, hammering, and assembling. With his own hands, Sandro transformed that small, empty room that previously only served as storage into a special place. He painted the walls light blue, installed a new window overlooking the patio, and built a wooden crib with such care that it seemed like the work of a professional carpenter. He also renovated our patio, planted more trees, fixed the fence, and placed a swing hanging from the mango tree branch. "For when he grows up," he would say with bright eyes. Every night, before sleeping, Sandro would caress my already well-rounded belly and speak quietly to the baby. He would tell him stories, make promises. "I'll teach you to fish, to play soccer, to fix things. I'll be the best father in the world for you." Then he would kiss my belly and say, "Thank you, God, for this miracle." It was moving to see that man so strong on the outside showing so much delicacy and affection. In my prenatal consultations in Divinopolis, since I didn't feel comfortable going to Bonfim du Sul, Sandro insisted on taking the day off to accompany me. He would ask the doctor everything, take notes of recommendations, and hold my hand during examinations. It was as if the whole world had abandoned us, but God and Sandro took my hand so I wouldn't fall. In moments when I almost became discouraged, when the weight of looks and words became unbearable, it was Sandro who gave me strength. "These people will see," he would say with a conviction that impressed me. "When our son is born, they'll realize it was God who sent him to us, and they'll have to swallow everything they've said." And so, between external insults and internal love, I continued with my high-risk pregnancy at 61 years old, in a city that only knew how to judge but understood nothing about miracles. My pregnancy wasn't easy, as you can imagine. A 61-year-old woman isn't made to carry a baby, or at least that's what doctors say. However, my child and I were proving otherwise at each consultation. The doctor in Divinopolis always shook his head, admiring the test results. "You have a strong organism, Signora Maristella, and this child too." I entered the 8th month of pregnancy with a belly that seemed like it was going to explode. My feet swelled so much that only old flip-flops fit me. My back hurt constantly, but I was happy. Each kick, each movement of the baby was like receiving a divine message in a reassuring tone. "Everything's going well, Maristella, just trust." Sandro, showing extreme care, practically prevented me from doing any household activities like cleaning the house. He only allowed me to cook if I was sitting. Even hanging clothes on the line was a task he insisted on doing for me, inventing excuses like, "You have to rest, Maristella," and concentrate on the baby. I allowed myself to be cared for like that, enjoying the attention and affection. Sifa came almost daily, brought me sweet soups, and spent time with me, keeping me company. She was getting used to the idea of pregnancy, and even began knitting small garments for the baby. If it was a boy, they would be blue, if a girl, yellow, since she never liked the color pink much. Already in the 8th month of pregnancy, I had a dream with Tonino, my deceased husband. In the dream, he was sitting on the porch in his favorite rocking chair, smiling at me. "Take good care of the child, Maristella, he's special," Tonino told me in my dream. I woke up with a feeling of warmth in my heart, as if I had received a blessing. However, at dawn the next day began the greatest test of my life. It was a cold July night. The wind was blowing hard against the window, and I had asked Sandro to put another blanket on the bed. I was deeply asleep, as is usual in exhausted pregnant women, when I was awakened by pain so intense it prevented me from screaming. It was as if a knife was piercing my belly, tearing me apart inside. When I put my hand under the sheet, I felt something wet. When I withdrew it, I saw it was covered in blood, lots of blood. I managed to call Sandro with a weak voice, almost unrecognizable. He woke up instantly, as if he had been waiting for the call. Seeing the blood, he turned pale. "My God, Maristella, the baby." He jumped from the bed, put on the first clothes he found, and picked me up in his arms as if I weighed nothing. Without even putting on shoes, still in pajamas, he went out barefoot, carrying me carefully. He put me in the back seat of the old car he had recently bought in installments. "Hold on, my love. Hold on," he repeated while driving desperately on the dark road connecting Bonfim du Sul with Divinopolis. The pain came in waves, each time more intense. I could feel the blood running and soaking the car seat. My vision began to cloud as if fog was forming before my eyes. I began to feel cold, despite the night not being so cold. "Sandro, what if something happens to me?" I began to say. He interrupted me, looking through the rearview mirror with eyes full of panic. "Don't say that. Nothing's going to happen. You're both going to be fine." But I knew something very serious was happening. My body, which had already gone through 2 pregnancies decades earlier, was sending alarm signals that couldn't be ignored. The baby was motionless, no longer moving, and the amount of blood was alarming. The journey to Divinopolis usually took an hour. Sandro did it in 35 minutes on that road full of curves. He arrived at the Santa Clara Hospital emergency room with tires screeching and honking the horn non-stop. The security guards at the door ran out, thinking it was some drunk causing problems. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they immediately called the nurses, who placed me on a stretcher and ran with me through the white and cold hospital corridors. Sandro came behind, barefoot with dirty feet, pajamas stained with my blood, begging them to save his child. I remember Dr. Mauricio, a doctor recently graduated who still seemed fresh out of college, was on duty. He examined my abdomen with instruments and asked me rapid questions I could barely answer. "Placental abruption," I heard him tell the nurse. "We have to operate immediately." They took me directly to the operating room. Everything seemed to spin around me, and the intense lights hurt my eyes. The bleeding was incessant. "Her blood pressure is dropping," they informed me. Before applying anesthesia, Dr. Mauricio approached. His young face showed seriousness and concern. He took my hand and spoke to me quietly, but with implacable clarity. "Mrs. Fernandez, the situation is serious. The placenta has completely detached, and you're losing a lot of blood. The baby is suffering with a weak heartbeat." He hesitated, cleared his throat, and continued. "Considering your age and condition, we face a difficult decision. We can try to save the baby or you. The chances of saving both are minimal." At that instant, time stopped. A choice no mother should be forced to make, an impossible decision. I saw Sandro on the other side of the room, held back by two nurses who were trying to prevent him from entering the sterilized zone. He was crying copiously, shouting my name. Our child had only been in my womb for 8 months, so small, so vulnerable, but already so loved. "Save him, doctor," I articulated with a voice firmer than I expected. "Save my child. He deserves to be born. I've already lived enough." The doctor tried to argue. "Signora Maristella, are you sure? And your husband?" "My child," I reiterated, feeling tears roll down my face. "Save my child. He's the only priority now." I watched Dr. Mauricio make a signal to the team. I saw a nurse prepare something in a syringe. I felt the needle penetrate my arm and the cold of anesthesia spread. I began to feel drowsy. My last thoughts before losing consciousness were for Sandro and for the baby I carried in my womb. I also remembered Tonino and the dream I had had. "Take good care of the child, Maristella. He's special." "I tried, Tonino," I thought as darkness enveloped me. "Now he's your child too. Take care of him from above." And I closed my eyes believing it was my end, but in that moment of surrender, I felt an inexplicable peace wash over me. It wasn't the peace of defeat, but the peace of a mother who had made the ultimate sacrifice. My last conscious thought was a prayer not for myself, but for the tiny life I carried, that I would never see the sun rise again, nor feel the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, nor hear the birds singing in the garden, imagining I would never know my son's face, nor feel his warmth in my arms. At that moment I accepted death, accepted sacrificing my life for his, and felt immense peace enveloping me as if a legion of angels surrounded me, transporting me far from that cold hospital room, far from pain, blood, and fear. "My child will live," was my last thought. And I smiled inwardly, convinced I had made the right decision, the only possible one for a mother. And then came nothingness, an absolute deep void, without dreams, without sensations, as if I had submerged in a dark and silent ocean where not even God could reach me, or at least that's what I believed at that moment. However, God had other plans, plans that no experienced doctor, nor the most skeptical person, could explain, because what happened next can only be described as a miracle. I don't know how long I remained in that darkness. It could have been an instant or millennia. I was oblivious to everything. I only felt that profound silence, that immense peace. I felt no pain, felt nothing but apprehension. It was as if my essence had dissipated, similar to fog in the air, devoid of body or weight. Suddenly, a luminosity emerged. It wasn't a clarity that seemed to purify the soul. In the center, I saw Tonino. He radiated joy. He seemed younger than when he died, without the worry marks that previously afflicted his face. He extended his hand as if inviting me to follow him. "Tonino!" I exclaimed, but no sound was heard. It was as if we communicated telepathically. "It's not time yet, Maristella," he expressed with his usual serenity. "Your hour hasn't come yet. You must return. There are people waiting for you." At that instant, I felt a force pushing me backward, as if a rope were tied to my waist, dragging me back. The light began to fade. Tonino gradually disappeared, and an oppressive weight manifested, as if they had put a stone on my chest. And then, suddenly, I opened my eyes. White predominated, the ceiling, the walls, everything immaculate. I thought I was still immersed in a dream because the light was too intense and bothered my eyes. After blinking several times, my vision adjusted. Little by little, I understood I was in a hospital room. I turned my head slowly, feeling a sharp pain in my neck, and found Sandro, sitting in an armchair next to the bed. He had an unshaven beard, deep dark circles, and disheveled hair. He seemed to have aged a decade in just one night. However, what most caught my attention was the small blue bundle he cradled in his arms as if it were made of crystal. I tried to articulate some words, but my throat was excessively dry. I could only emit a guttural sound, almost a moan, but it was enough. Sandro raised his head instantly, and seeing my eyes open, time seemed to stop. "Maris!" he exclaimed quietly, fearful it was a mere illusion. "Maris, are you awake?" I managed to nod slightly with my head. His expression transformed. I had never seen anyone cry like that. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief so profound it seemed he was going to explode. Tears ran copiously down his face, even wetting his beard. "He's alive, Maris," Sandro said, approaching with the small blue bundle. "Our son is alive." He inclined the bundle toward me, and for the first time I contemplated my son's face. He was tiny and fragile, with skin still reddened and wrinkled, eyes closed and mouth the size of a grape. A few strands of dark hair adhered to his little head. It was the most moving sight I had ever had. "The doctor says he's very strong," Sandro continued with his voice breaking. "He cried as soon as he was born despite being premature. He has the lungs of a true warrior." I tried to speak again, and this time a whisper was heard. "I'm alive, too." Sandro knelt beside the bed with the baby in one arm and holding my hand with the other. "The doctor said it was a miracle, Maris. You lost so much blood that everyone thought you wouldn't resist. They had to give you transfusions. Your heart almost stopped, twice during surgery." At that moment, Dr. Mauricio entered the room. Seeing me awake, he froze at the door, stupefied. He looked at the clock as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. "Mrs. Fernandez," he said, approaching the bed, "you shouldn't be awake yet. The medication is very strong." "Strong like our boy, doctor," Sandro commented with some pride in his voice. The doctor directed a beam of light toward my eyes, took my pulse, and expressed his surprise with a shake of his head. "In my entire career, I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "You were in critical condition less than a day ago. It was necessary to remove your uterus to stop the hemorrhaging. And still, your chances of surviving were minimal. And now, look at you. This has been divine work, doctor." I managed to articulate in a whisper. "I saw a light, doctor." Mauricio sketched a smile without confirming or denying my words. He was young, probably with rigorous scientific training that left no room for belief in miracles. However, I was sure of what I had witnessed. I knew I had been on the brink of death, and that I had been given a second chance. "As for your son," the doctor continued, "he also represents a singular case. For a premature baby born at 32 weeks, which is 8 months, born in such unfavorable circumstances, he shows surprising vitality. He hasn't even needed mechanical ventilation, which is unusual in babies of this gestational age. He adjusted the 4 in my arm and informed us he would return later to perform new tests. Before withdrawing, he stopped at the door and observed us. Me in the bed, Sandro kneeling at my side, and the baby in his arms. "I don't consider myself a religious man," he said. "But if at any moment in my life I could witness something similar to a miracle, it would be what has occurred in this room in the last 24 hours. After he left, Sandro carefully placed our son in my lap. He was so small and light, but I could feel his strength. His heart beat rapidly against mine, like a frightened little bird. His skin was warm and soft. I felt too weak to hold him properly, but the simple contact of his body with mine caused a transformation within me. "He still doesn't have a name," Sandro informed me, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I wanted to wait for you to wake up so we could choose it together." Contemplating that perfect little face, I knew, without doubting, what his name should be. "Raphael," I said, remembering the light, Tonino, and my return from death. "His name will be Raphael," Sandro smiled. "Raphael," he repeated, enjoying the sound of the name. "It's a beautiful name. Does it have any special meaning?" "It's an angel's name," I explained to him. "The angel of healing. He appeared as a remedy for our lives." I hesitated, not knowing if I should share my experience with the light and Tonino's vision. Sandro might interpret it as a side effect of medications, drugs, or anesthesia. However, he just squeezed my hand and said, because it was an angel who brought you both back to me." At that instant, as if understanding we were talking about him, little Raphael opened his eyes for the first time. They weren't the typical newborn eyes, vague and unfocused. They were eyes that seemed to see, understand, eyes that already had their own light. "Look, Sandro," I murmured emotionally. "He's looking at us." Sandro approached and kissed our son's forehead. "Welcome to the world, Raphael," he told him quietly. "You gave us a scare, you know. But every second of anguish has been worth it. You're our miracle." And so we continued, the three of us. An improbable family formed against all odds, composed of a 61-year-old woman who escaped death, a 34-year-old man who never imagined being a father this way, and a premature baby who showed strength disproportionate to his size. I remained hospitalized for 3 weeks. Each day produced new progress that surprised the medical team. "Your recovery is being remarkably rapid," commented Nurse Lourdes, responsible for my care during the night shift. "If you continue like this, you'll soon be home with your son." Raphael remained in the incubator as a preventive measure, but didn't need any specific treatment. His development was accelerated, he ate eagerly, and expressed his needs with vigorous crying. "This child shows great desire to live," observed the pediatrician, Dr. Carolina, during examination. When they finally discharged both Raphael and me, Sandro picked us up with a car decorated with blue balloons. He seemed like a completely different person from the man who had brought me to the hospital that anguishing night. He was shaved, wore new clothes, and displayed a radiant smile. During the trip back to Bonfim du Sul, I contemplated the sky through the car window and murmured a silent thanks for being alive, for having my son in my arms, for having a companion like Sandro at my side, and for recognizing, without doubt, that life is infinitely more enigmatic and marvelous than we can imagine. Looking at the sky, I understood it. God had made a decision about me. He reserved important tasks for me to fulfill in this world, and the most crucial of them was raising that child who slept peacefully in my lap, oblivious to the fact that his simple existence represented the greatest miracle ever witnessed in that city. Returning to Bonfim du Sul with Raphael in my arms was like entering a different story. The city that had once turned its back on me now turned toward me, but with a new look. It was as if everyone had heard about the miracle. My near death in the hospital, the premature baby who survived, the doctor's statements that there was no plausible explanation. The news spread with the speed of water running down a slope. We chose the name Raphael for our son, an angelic name, Raphael, the angel of healing. And there couldn't have been a more appropriate name, because that child not only healed my life, but also the lives of many people in that city. During the first week after our return home, I still felt weak, recovering from surgery. Raphael was very small and needed to eat every 3 hours. Due to his prematurity and the surgery, I didn't produce milk, so we resorted to the bottle. Sandro stayed awake with me during the early morning, heating milk, changing diapers, and helping me get up from bed. He showed no interest in hiring outside help. He claimed he wanted to care for us personally. I remember the first visit we received. It was Sifa, my comadre, who brought a still warm carrot cake and a bag with baby clothes made by herself. She entered timidly like someone who doesn't know what to say. However, upon seeing Raphael sleeping in the crib Sandro had built, her eyes filled with tears. "Maristella, this is the most beautiful baby I've seen in my entire life," she said, covering her mouth with her hand, and he really was. Despite being premature, Raphael was enchanting. He had thick, black hair, large, dark eyes like Sandro's, and clear skin that seemed like velvet. His little hands were so small they fit entirely around my finger. After Sifa, we received a visit from Dona Jurema from the market. She brought a package of diapers and powdered milk. "It's a gift," she said, avoiding direct eye contact, as if she were embarrassed. I knew she had been one of the people who had criticized me most when she learned of the pregnancy, but now she was there offering gifts. An apology not expressed in words. Days passed, and more people began to appear at our house. They brought food, baby clothes, diapers, or simply came to meet Raphael. Curiosity was evident. Naturally, they wanted to see with their own eyes the miraculous baby who had been born to a 61-year-old woman, but the look of judgment had disappeared, replaced by a look of amazement, of admiration, as if they had finally understood that life holds mysteries that escape our control. The most notable transformation occurred in my daughters, Solange and Patricia, who had considered me crazy when they learned of the pregnancy. Now they called every day to know how their little brother was doing. Patricia was the first to visit us about 15 days after we were discharged from the hospital. She arrived alone, bringing with her a teddy bear larger than Raphael and with eyes full of uncertainty. The moment I put the baby in her arms, I noticed a change in her expression. It was as if all the criticism, all the judgments had instantly dissipated. She held her brother with delicacy, and when he opened his eyes and seemed to smile at her, Patricia burst into tears like a child. "Mom, forgive me," she said between sobs. "I said so many things without thinking, I judged so much, but he's perfect." And there, at that instant, I knew I had recovered my daughter. Solange took longer to appear. She only came when Raphael was almost 2 months old. She brought her husband and her 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I barely knew. It was the first time in almost 3 years that she had set foot in my house. She arrived serious, formal, as if fulfilling a professional obligation. Upon seeing Raphael, she stopped at the door, observing him. The baby had already gained considerable weight, could already hold his head up, and recognized voices. He looked at her with those big, curious eyes and emitted a soft sound, as if saying, "Hello." At that moment the barrier broke. Solange approached, took him in her arms, and hugged him as if she were embracing the entire world. "He has your eyes, Mom," she said quietly. And it was true. Although the eye color was Sandro's, the look, the expression were identical to mine, as if he had inherited the best of each of us. Meanwhile, Raphael continued growing strong and healthy, to the surprise of the doctors who attended him. Each consultation followed the same pattern. "This child has impressive vitality." Dr. Mauricio, who had assisted at the birth, commented that it was hard to believe that baby had been born so premature and in such critical circumstances. The biggest surprise of all occurred when Raphael was about 5 months old. We were at home on a Sunday afternoon when someone knocked on the door. It was Father Anselmo, the same one who had spoken of modern aberrations in his sermon. He was alone, holding a package wrapped in blue paper. "Signora Maristella," he said hesitantly, "I've come to meet the child and bring him a gift." I invited him in, although I still had a hurt heart from the way he had treated me. Sandro was in the patio fixing the chicken coop and entered the living room with a hostile expression upon seeing the priest. But I signaled for him to calm down. Father Anselmo sat on the edge of the sofa, holding the package in his lap with fear it might explode. I went to get Raphael, who had just woken from his nap. He was already laughing heartily, recognized people, and stretched his little arms asking to be picked up. When Father Anselmo saw the child, something profound moved him. He paled as if he had encountered a specter. He alternated his gaze between Raphael, me, Sandro, and Raphael again. "May I hold him?" he asked with an almost unrecognizable voice. Very carefully, I placed the baby in his arms. Raphael, curious, looked at the father, sketched a smile, and extended his little hand, touching his face. And then Father Anselmo did something unimaginable. He cried copiously, like a child, without any shame there in front of us. Between sobs, he said, "I've come to ask forgiveness for the words I spoke, for the thoughts I harbored. I judged what I didn't understand, and God has shown me how wrong I was." He told us that during a visit to a priest friend in Divinopolis, he had heard about the miracle that occurred at Santa Clara Hospital, a 61-year-old woman and a premature baby who theoretically shouldn't have survived. Upon discovering that I was that woman, he felt as if a divine blow had hit him squarely. "This child is a gift," he affirmed, looking at Raphael with reverence. "And I would like to baptize him, if you'll allow me. It would be a great honor." We accepted immediately. Raphael's baptism became the most important event Bonfim du Sul had ever witnessed. The church was full, with people crowded even outside. Those who had ignored me before now wanted to be godparents. Touch the baby, be part of that story. And you know what Father Anselmo proclaimed during the ceremony? That Raphael had come to transmit a lesson to the entire city, that we shouldn't judge what we don't know, that God writes straight on crooked lines, and that true love transcends age. The moment he poured holy water on my son's head, the baptismal font overflowed, spilling water abundantly. To this day, the inhabitants of Bonfim du Sul tell that they saw the water shine in a singular way when it touched Raphael's head, and that the church was permeated with an inexplicable floral aroma. Time continued its course. Raphael grew strong and intelligent, learning to walk precociously. At 10 months, he was already taking his first steps, held by Sandro's hand. He pronounced his first words before most children, calling us Papa and Mama. With just 1 year, he was already articulating short phrases to everyone's amazement. Currently, at 11 years old, he's the personification of joy in our lives. He runs through the patio as if he had wings on his feet, climbs trees with a monkey's agility, and raises birds in shoeboxes. He has a special connection with animals. Even the most frightened approach him. At school, he stands out as the best student in the class, especially in mathematics. However, what most calls attention about Raphael is his gaze, a brightness that seems to carry the sun within, and people, those who mocked me, who turned their backs on me, who insulted me, now treat me with respect and call me Mrs. Fernandez. Mothers ask for Raphael to play with their children, claiming he's a positive influence. The elderly in the square long for him to sit and listen to their stories because they say he listens like no one else. Even Father Anselmo, who has become our friend, claims Raphael has a special gift for consoling people. Recently, Neusa, the neighbor who spat on the ground when I passed, came to ask Raphael to visit her house to teach her grandson to build a small wooden house for the dog. Of course, he accepted the invitation, and upon returning shared his experience, claiming that Doña Neusa made the best cheese bread he had ever tasted. It was in this context that changes began to occur. The child who was once a cause of shame became a source of admiration, not only for me and Sandro, but for the entire community. The same people who called me crazy now address me as mother, showing respect in their voices, and when I walk down the street with Raphael, it's frequent for someone to stop to ask for the child's blessing. As I always say, God's plans are perfect, and sometimes He uses the most unusual paths to give us the greatest blessings. Real life differs from movies where a miracle invariably leads to a fairy tale. Despite the change in how the city saw me, even with the immense joy Raphael brought me, we continued facing countless challenges. Raising a child after 60 isn't a simple task. It would be dishonest to say otherwise. There were days when my body simply couldn't keep up with the child's pace. When he started crawling, my God, he seemed to have a motor built into his legs. It was enough to turn my back for an instant for him to already be under the table or trying to climb the bookshelf. Sandro continued working hard. He got stable employment at the Novo Horizonte construction company, responsible for building new buildings near the bus station. He left home before dawn and returned with his back bent from fatigue. However, he never complained. Upon arriving home, although exhausted, he still found energy to play ball with Raphael in the patio, read him stories before sleep, and help me with household chores. Sandro recently turned 45. His hair began to show some gray at the temples, which gives him special charm. His hands remain calloused from hard work, but they're the gentlest hands I've felt in my life. He still looks at me the same as in those first days when he was fixing my roof, as if I were the most precious thing in the world. Of course, not all moments are of perfect harmony. We argue like any couple. There are days when he arrives late from work and I'm already in a bad mood. There are days when I criticize the disorder he leaves in the garage with tools scattered everywhere. There are days when he gets angry because I spoil Raphael too much or because I insist on doing things the doctor has recommended I avoid. However, disagreements don't destroy true love. And after the storm, we always find a way to return to what really matters. Sandro cares for me as if I were a piece of crystal, but stubborn crystal, as he himself usually says. He jokes saying he's never seen crystal with so much opinion. Our routine is simple, but full of small joys. I get up before them and prepare coffee. I enjoy that moment of solitude in the kitchen, listening to the birds outside and feeling the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. When I have time, I prepare corn cake or cheese bread. Then I wake Sandro, who invariably asks for just 5 more minutes before getting up, with completely disheveled hair. Raphael, on the other hand, wakes up alone. He seems to have an internal alarm clock. At 7 o'clock sharp in the morning, he's already in the kitchen in pajamas, with spiked hair, asking for chocolate milk. Every morning begins with my grandson's bustle, telling me his dreams, detailing his plans for the day, and flooding me with a torrent of questions, some of which I don't always know how to answer. Then Sandro goes to work, Raphael goes to school, and I dedicate myself to household chores. I can no longer maintain the same pace as before. Bending down to clean under furniture has become an impossible task, but I still take care of the essentials. I continue caring for the garden, which now even has strawberries planted by Raphael. I care for the chickens, collect eggs, and prepare lunch with fresh ingredients harvested from the garden. The house takes on new vibrant energy when Raphael returns from school. He often invites his friends to play in the patio, invents stories with his toys, scribbles drawings, and performs experiments he discovers on the internet. This child's curiosity is admirable. He longs to understand how everything works, the origin of things, and their final destination. Sandro arrives at the end of the afternoon, takes a revitalizing shower to dissipate fatigue, and joins us for dinner. This is undoubtedly my favorite moment of the day. The 3 of us gather at the table, share the day's events, laugh at Raphael's mischief, and plan the weekend. Afterward, Sandro helps Raphael with homework, especially in mathematics, a subject in which he demonstrates great aptitude. Our house remains modest, with blue walls showing signs of discoloration and the lush patio full of fruit trees. We have chickens, a mixed-breed dog called Fumaza that Raphael found abandoned on the street, and a black cat known as Sombra. The comforting aroma of corn cake almost always floats in the air, harmonizing with the perfume of the roses I planted at the entrance. On weekends, we receive frequent visits. My daughters come more regularly lately. Solange brings my grandchildren who adore playing with their little uncle. Patricia, who never wanted children, assumes the role of proud aunt, spoiling Raphael and taking him for walks. It's notable how his birth has strengthened family bonds. My friend Sefa still visits us almost daily for coffee. She brings powdered cookies, knowing how much Raphael likes them. Although she's aged and has difficulty walking, she hasn't lost her contagious joy or appreciation for good conversation. "It's this child who keeps me alive," she always says, pointing to Raphael. Life isn't without challenges, evidently. There are days when I feel joint pains, days when fatigue threatens to bring me down. Sometimes I find myself worried about the future. After all, I've already turned 72. How much longer will I have to see my son grow? Will I have the opportunity to meet the grandchildren Raphael will give me someday? But then I look out the window and see Sandro teaching Raphael to fix a bicycle. I observe the large, calloused hands of the father holding his son's still delicate little hands, showing him how to handle tools. I hear both their laughter, so similar, resonating in the patio, and I think that even if I'm not present to see everything, I know my son will be fine. He has the best father I could have chosen. Solange once asked me if I didn't regret raising a child at this stage of life, if it wasn't an excessive sacrifice. I replied that sacrifice is living without love, without purpose. It's waking up in the morning and finding no motivation to get out of bed. It's looking at the future and glimpsing only solitude. That is sacrifice. Because Raphael, even on the most difficult days, even when he tests my patience, as only a child is capable of doing, represents the greatest joy I've experienced. Each new discovery of his is as if it were mine, too. Each achievement, from the first step to my son's academic success, floods me with immense joy that overflows my being. And Sandro, he's the companion I never imagined finding on this journey. Our love flourished from overcoming adversities, nourished by gratitude, patience, and the conviction that each shared instant is a precious gift, immune to trivialities. We're still the object of looks and comments on the street, but now with a different tone. "There goes Signora Maristella's family," they whisper. family. A word I once believed I would never again associate with my name. Once absorbed on the terrace, I watched Raphael play with Fumaza. Sandro joined me, intertwining our fingers in silence, contemplating our son explore the patio, bathed by the afternoon sun's warmth and lulled by the cicadas' song. "What are you thinking about?" he asked me after a while. I reflected on life's turns, on how I believed I had exhausted my experiences and hoped for time to pass. "And then you appeared at the market with that ladder on your back," I completed. He smiled, squeezing my hand. "I thank God every day for that damaged roof," he responded. "That's our reality. A simple house, chickens in the patio, the aroma of corn cake floating in the air, and Raphael's imaginary stories resonating in the rooms. We have a love that defied social conventions, a son considered a miracle by medicine, and the conviction that happiness never runs out. And that, dear, is true wealth. That's the authentic miracle. Sometimes, daughter, I sit in the porch rocking chair, contemplate Bonfim du Soul's starry sky, and marvel at life's mysteries. I never imagined that at 61, when I believed I had lived everything life had to offer, God would give me new love and a son. This story isn't fiction, but my life. A life that changed radically when I had already resigned myself to waiting for time to pass. A life that filled with vibrant colors when the world told me to conform to monochrome. Many give up happiness because they believe age prevents it. People who imprison their dreams because they consider the moment to realize them has passed. Individuals who surrender to others' opinions believing certain experiences aren't appropriate for their age. But I ask myself, who established an age limit for happiness? Who decreed that our journey has an expiration date for starting over? Who determined that after 60, life reduces to a complementary phase, a waiting room? Look at me. At 61, while many women my age were dedicating themselves to knitting and waiting for their grandchildren's Sunday visits, I was pregnant. I was discovering new love. I was facing an entire society to defend my right to happiness as life had given it to me. It wasn't easy, as you can imagine. There were tears, fears, disapproving looks, and moments when I feared succumbing. However, today, when reviewing the past, I wouldn't change absolutely anything. Absolutely nothing was in vain, because each tear shed, each insult uttered, each door that closed before me led me to this precise moment. Here I am, a 72-year-old woman who can affirm with a heart full of joy that she has found true happiness. Not superficial conformist happiness of those content with little. It's vibrant, intense happiness that wakes me every morning with enormous desire to contemplate dawn, to hear my son call me mama, to feel the warmth of Sandro's embrace when he returns from work. Just yesterday, Raphael came from school radiant. Radiant because the teacher had asked him to write an essay about his hero. And do you know who he chose? Me, his own mother. He wrote that I'm a heroine for having given my life for him, even before knowing him, for facing the world each day with a smile on my face, even when my joints hurt, even when my body feels exhausted. He handed me the essay, and upon finishing reading it, he looked at me with those bright eyes that seemed to harbor all the firmament's stars and said, "Mom, I'm the luckiest child in the world. Why did God choose you to be my mother?" I was completely speechless, totally mute. The only reaction I could have was to hug my son and cry copiously, because at that instant I fully understood the purpose of everything I had lived. I understood the reason I had returned from the brink of death in that operating room. I understood why Tonino had come in the light to send me back. We spend our whole lives believing we know what's best for us. We make plans, set goals, and feel frustrated when things don't turn out as expected. But sometimes, very rarely, life gives us a surprise so big, so unexpected, that we're invaded by admiring amazement at divine wisdom. Despite all difficulties, all pain, all prejudices I've faced, today I can look anyone in the eyes and affirm, it's been worth it. Every second has been worth it. Because my son's laughter while playing in the patio, Sandro's embrace when I arrive exhausted from the market, the house full of joy on Sundays with my daughters and grandchildren. All of that is priceless. I've witnessed how an entire city has transformed thanks to our love. I've seen people who judged me begging forgiveness with tears in their eyes. I've witnessed transformation, not only in my life, but in the lives of so many people around me. Father Anselmo, the same one who criticized me harshly in his sermon, is today one of the greatest defenders of the idea that love has no age. He even uses our story as an example in his Sunday homilies. God writes well with crooked lines, he usually says, and sometimes uses the most unexpected paths to teach us about true love. Therefore, if someone dares to tell you that you've passed the age, that there's no longer time to be happy, that your dreams are nonsense at this stage of life, look at me, tell my story. Tell them you know a woman who at 61 found true love and a son who is her miracle. Tell them this woman, instead of hiding ashamed when the whole town criticized her, raised her head and continued forward. Tell them this woman, when faced with the difficult choice between her life and her son's, didn't hesitate for an instant. And also tell them this woman, by a mystery even doctors can't explain, survived to share her story. Today they call me mother with pride and affection, the same people who called me crazy, irresponsible, a shame. Today they look at me with respect, not because I changed to please them, but because I followed my heart, even when everything, general opinion, was that I was wrong. Sefa, my great friend, always refers to Raphael as the miracle child, and I share that vision. However, the miracle transcends his strong birth, overcoming all adversities. It's not limited to my survival from surgery considered mortal by doctors. The true miracle lies in transformation, in love's victory over prejudice. Life flourished where only darkness was expected. With the experience I've accumulated, I've learned that life offers no guarantees. I don't know how much time I have left in this world, if I'll have the opportunity to see Raphael graduate, marry, and have his own children. However, each awakening, each smile, each laugh, and each embrace of his are invaluable gifts. If you doubt my story, if you consider it invented or exaggerated, I understand. Some things in life are hard to believe. Certain blessings are so great they seem fantastic. But I invite you to visit me, to have coffee at my house, to sit on the terrace, to try my cornflower cake, to chat with Sandro, and to meet Raphael. Witness with your own eyes love's transforming power. Then you can tell me if my son is fruit of my imagination or a divine gift. After all, what I've learned from all this is that it's never too late to start over, to love, and to be happy. Life can surprise us at the last moment, when we least expect it, in the most unexpected way. And when that surprise arrives, don't doubt it. Embrace it. Even if everyone considers you crazy, even if the whole city mocks you, who knows if that will be the beginning of your own miracle. Now, let me tell you this story from Sandro's perspective, the father of my miracle child. My name is Sandro, I'm 45 years old, and I'm here sitting on a bench in Bonfim du Sol's central square enjoying my lunch hour. I brought the food Maristella prepared for me with rice, beans, steak with onions, and a farofa only she knows how to make. Before I used to eat lunch at the construction site, sitting on a cement bag or piece of wood. Today I prefer to come here, breathe fresh air, and observe the city's movement. It's curious how everything changes. I'm looking at the square's kiosk, where about 10 years ago people gathered to speak ill of me and Maristella. I remember passing by here and conversations ceasing abruptly. Looks followed me and whispers began as soon as I turned my back. Today people greet me, ask about Raphael, and invite me to their children's birthday parties. When I arrived in Bonfim du Sol, I had nothing, only experience and hope for a better life. I came with the clothes I was wearing and my toolbox. I slept in a small room at the back of Juvenal's store, paying with maintenance services. I never imagined finding love, much less that love becoming a family. Who would say that a 34-year-old manual worker would fall in love with a 61-year-old lady, that we would have a child together, and that I would put down roots in this city where I arrived just passing through? Life reserves surprises that defy logic. I observe people in incessant search for romantic relationships on apps, prioritizing individuals from the same age group with similar tastes and styles. Paradoxically, I found love when my only intention was to find a service to fix a roof. When Maristella informed me of the pregnancy, I felt a mixture of trembling and crying, accompanied by unknown fear. Responsibility didn't fall only on me. It was about a baby on the way and a woman old enough to be my mother, but who placed in me a need never seen before. The transition was abrupt. From being a manual worker living off informal jobs, I became the family breadwinner. I got stable employment, saved every cent, sacrificing myself with exhausting overtime. Little by little, on weekends, I renovated Maristella's house. Raphael's crib was built with wood scraps from a construction site. I came to juggle 3 jobs at once. I started the workday at 5 a.m. and returned at 10 p.m. Fatigue was such that I could barely wash myself before collapsing in bed. However, I signed an unbreakable commitment to dedicate my life to caring for her and the baby. I fulfilled that promise that fateful night at the hospital. Until today, emotion prevents me from narrating details without my voice breaking. I believed I would lose them both. The image of Maristella, pale and fragile, intubated in the ICU, and Raphael, so small he barely fit in my hands, in an incubator surrounded by cables and devices with alarms sounding, remains alive in my memory. The night prolonged with incessant comings and goings through the hospital, interspersed with prayers, promises, and pleas. Both their survival represented a second chance. Our family was reborn twice, upon receiving news of the pregnancy and upon returning home after hospitalization. Currently, Raphael is 11 years old. Moments ago, he passed running with his school companions on the way to the store to buy ice cream after class. Seeing me, he came quickly to hug me and resumed running. He's in transition between childhood and pre-adolescence, has practically reached my height, growing rapidly, and demonstrates notable intelligence. He gets excellent grades and was awarded in last year's Math Olympics. His talent for soccer surpasses many older boys, and music also attracts him, but what makes me proudest is his character. He's a respectful, kind child who isn't ashamed to help with household chores and treats his mother like a queen. Currently, every time Raphael calls me Papa, I understand the true meaning of the word purpose. When I leave work exhausted, sweating, and with an aching body, the prospect of returning home where he and Maristella wait for me drives me forward. Maristella is 72 years old. She remains strong and stubborn, running the house with a firm hand. She insists on preparing my food every day, although I tell her it's not necessary. A man who works hard needs substantial food, she argues. Her hair is completely white, and wrinkles have marked her more, but her gaze remains the same that captivated me from the first moment. The local community has gotten used to our union. At first, we were objects of curiosity and malice. Today, we're treated like a normal family. We're even cited as an example of overcoming and resilience. If someone insinuates I related to Maristella out of interest, I just smile. People imagined I coveted her wealth. She who only had a modest pension and the simple house she inherited from her deceased husband. They thought I would hit them and disappear. 11 years have passed, and here I remain. I've changed jobs, not cities. I've formed a family, not destroyed it. I've cared for her, not abandoned her. What we've built can't be measured in money, but in value, in perseverance, in enduring life's blows and continuing forward. Soon I'll have to return to work. We're building the city's new health center right at the entrance. Currently, I'm the foreman. I no longer carry cement bags on my back. I have 5 men working under my command. Some are the same ones who mocked me when they learned of Maristella's pregnancy. Today they call me Señor Sandro and ask my advice when they have problems at home. That's life in a small town. People judge quickly, but also know how to recognize when they're wrong. Prejudice becomes respect when you demonstrate day after day, year after year, that your feelings are sincere. We're going to organize a small party in the house's patio. Nothing grand, just a barbecue with school friends and family. Maristella's daughters will come from Sao Paulo with their grandchildren, who are older than Raphael. It's become a celebration the town looks forward to every year. You know what's most interesting? The same people who once said that Maristella and I were together because of the age difference now say we make a very beautiful couple, as if time has adjusted everything. I have matured, become more stable, while Maristella remains the same strong fortress as before. This is my life now: work, family, and responsibility. Simple things, but they are everything. Every morning when I wake up, I know I have a place to return to, people who are always waiting and loving me. I am no longer a wanderer, no longer carrying a ladder and not knowing where I'm going. I have found what I need most in this life: a family, a home, where love is not because of what I have or what I look like, but because I am myself. Through the days and months, I have learned that love is not something easily obtained, but it's also not something distant or vague. It is very real, requiring patience, time, and the courage to face challenges. Life may not be perfect, but I couldn't ask for more, because I have found what I truly need, and that makes me feel complete. Despite the difficulties, I know I'm going in the right direction, and I will continue this way. If you find that what I've shared resonates with your life, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's share more truly meaningful moments in this life together.